I think it's important to keep the memory of the Kindertransport and the Holocaust alive because it is an example of what was seen as an everyday society slowly and then suddenly turning from a democracy into a fascist dictatorship, and one that relied on violent anti-Semitic racism. And we need to keep in mind that this can happen again, not in the same way, but in very related ways. I grew up knowing that my mother was from Vienna and knowing that her parents sent her away. But I didn't know that she was part of a larger movement, that it was part of the Kindertransports. And so when it took me a while to go figure out what I wanted to do, and I went to college and dropped out of college. And when I went back and was studying documentary filmmaking, because I found that I really loved that, how you can tell stories of people's lives, and I'm so curious about that. I started asking, I thought I would make a 7-minute film about my mother because I knew she was different from other mothers. She had an accent, which the Kindertransport children have a unique accent that's a combination of German or Austrian and British. So she had that. She was afraid. She was afraid of things for us. She ate foods that other American families did not eat. Although she hated spotted dick very much. But she did like tongue, which was not so delightful. So I thought I would make a 7-minute film about her, and then I started asking her questions. And because I was making a film, and I wasn't just asking for myself, she answered my questions. So I realized that it wasn't just her story I wanted to tell, that I wanted to tell the story of the Kindertransports, which no one in the U.S. knew then. So I thought it was a story of rescue during the Holocaust that was unknown, that was important to tell. And it was also a story of people in Britain acting from far away to save lives. So it could show how people now could take action. For many years, the Kindertransport children, and certainly my mother, felt that they were not really survivors of the Holocaust. They were the lucky ones. Nothing really happened to them. But terrible things did happen to them. They saw things no child should see, and they were separated from their parents, from their families, in some cases from siblings. I have a dear friend who's turning 96 today, who is from Vienna and was on a Kindertransport, and her mother had to choose one child to send, and she never saw her mother and her sister again. So they have often terrible feelings of separation, of fear. My mother had fear of crowds, of police officers. I grew up never thinking that the police were my friends, because people in uniform were to be feared, because Jews during the Nazi years were not citizens, so they had no protection from the police. And I knew little bits and pieces of when Nazi youth had come 3 times on November 9th to my grandparents' apartment, and my mother was in a back room, and they held a pillow over her head, her sister did, so that her screams of fear as things were being smashed in the apartment couldn't be heard, because my mother's sister's boyfriend was hiding in a closet, and if the Nazis had found that back room, they would have arrested him. As it was, they arrested my grandfather and took him to a local jail for a week. He was very lucky. He was in a prisoner of war in Siberia in World War I and fought for the Austro-Hungarian army, so he was let go after 10 days, but then had to find a way to get out. So yeah, there are many effects from the Kindertransport for generations, and it is, I will say, it is different in that they were saved by strangers, and they all remember. My mother remembered. She didn't remember much of the train journey from Vienna, but she remembered when they crossed the border into the Netherlands, and that women stood, the train stopped, and women stood with hot chocolate and oranges to give the children. And this was the first time in years that these children had seen strangers as friends, as strangers welcoming them.